Good evening, coaches, and welcome to our Nations of Coaches live webinar. At Nations of Coaches, we want to serve, connect, and equip. And tonight, we are going to equip. I'm really excited about the opportunity to talk about onboarding. This subject has skyrocketed in college basketball. It has become extremely important, onboarding your team. And tonight we have one of the best with us, Jack Easterby. If anybody can talk about onboarding, it is Jack Easterby. Good evening, Jack.
Hey, brother, how are you?
I'm doing great. For 3 or 4 years, Jack and Earl Grant and Laval Jordan and I, we would get together once a week. We would talk about hoops, we would talk about Jesus, and we would talk about leadership. And one early one morning, we started talking about onboarding, and Jack started sharing some of the most incredible information that I've ever heard on onboarding. It's become so important in college basketball. All of us have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 new players. And onboarding has just become crucial to success, hasn't it, Jack?
No doubt, no doubt. Now more than ever. And as we'll talk about tonight, I don't think it's just limited to your team. There's so many different things, obviously, that we are constantly onboarding, whether it's new rules or new administrators. Obviously, onboarding is a moving target, and it seems like it's always on our to-do list. If we're leading anything right now, we are always onboarding.
Yes. Wife Holly, 2 daughters, Houston and Harriet. Jack has served multiple roles as an executive in the NFL, 3 Super Bowl championships. I remember watching the Super Bowl and I saw you holding that trophy, man. It was awesome. It was so great. And just a incredibly successful career. And thank you, Jack, for being with us tonight to talk about onboarding. So why don't you take it from here?
Okay.
You're going to take over the screen. Uh, Coaches, put questions in the chat. Get us some questions in the chat. And at the end, Jack has been kind enough to agree to answer 3 or 4 of your questions as you hear his presentation. So let's get out our pens and papers. Let's get out our laptops and let's get after it right here, Jack. You're up. Take it over.
Brother. Okay, brother. Thanks so much, Barkley. I'm going to share my screen and should be good here to get started. I would be remiss if I didn't start by just thanking everybody for Sunday night, taking some time out of your schedule to be intentional on trying to be a better leader, a better communicator, and hopefully a better onboarder. Nations of Coaches is an awesome ministry. I have been so blessed by Tommy Kyle as he has launched this ministry, and then now with Barkley's leadership, just an amazing steward of relationships and a steward of people. And I feel like I have been incredibly blessed just to know him and be mentored by him. And so as we talk about these subjects today, a lot of these I've learned from Barkley and other leaders that have influenced me over the years. And so these are not original. Most of these are things I learned through experience and things that I've seen along the way, maybe through mistakes, and sometimes every now and then getting a few things right. I would just say to you as just a matter of principle as we get started on this topic, obviously Barkley hit the nail on the head to start. If we're going to talk about onboarding, we really can't begin that discussion without talking about the changes in athletics over the last several years, whether it was rule changes, obviously eligibility changes, transfer changes, and obviously the payment changes that have happened in both college and professional athletics, because all of it has really changed. There has been a massive shift to the importance of onboarding. I also think, though, in that process, there has been a massive shift to the hearts of leaders as they try to onboard. And so for all of us, as we've tried to think about what we have to accomplish each day as a leader, it's a little natural to get cynical and to get frustrated with the amount of new onboarding that has to happen because rules have changed. So we really need to start with a heart posture check or an attitude check for all of us, because the reality is you can't be a good onboarder until you kind of get over the idea that this is now an essential part of being a great leader. The retention of students, the retention of pro athletes, the retention of coaches, the retention of staff is increasingly lower. And so the ability to have the same group for multiple years in a row is extremely unlikely. So as a leader, as we approach this subject and just look at onboarding as an entity, the first thing I would just urge you is to try to really lean into the idea of getting over yourself and understanding that you need to lean into this topic and be good at it. You have to lean into this topic and be good at it, because yes, we will have more people than ever who enter and exit our organizations. In order to be successful while we are leaders, we got to do this well. So let's start. I'm going to go through a few slides. I've got really two important facts that I'm going to hit, and both of my talking points will come off of those facts. And I will send the slideshow, not that it's anything special, but I will send it to Barkley so he has it for everybody who attended and anybody who is following up after we get done tonight. Well, let's start with the obvious statement here, but let's look at this in a little bit of a different way. The first fact that we have to believe as a leader in relationship to onboarding is that we are always onboarding. Now, when I say that, I don't mean just year to year in the statement as Barkley introduced this topic, like new players and obviously, new roster type components. I also mean it like new administrators, right? New support staff, new arenas, new locker rooms, new friends of the program, new donors. So as leaders, we are always onboarding. And I think it's very important for us to understand that when we introduce a new concept to the group, that needs to be a cherished moment. It needs to be an intentionally cherished moment that we have an opportunity to transition information, maybe a person or maybe a thing, into our group. And because all of our groups are sacred and we hold the groups and the belief of the group so sacred, we need to be very intentional with the idea of how we believe things are implemented, or the information that we get that we need to give to our group is inserted into the group. So think about it like this: whether you are onboarding into a conference tournament, or you are onboarding into an NCAA tournament, or maybe you're just onboarding, obviously, into a new season, we are always onboarding. So as you lean in, you need to realize that throughout the year, you will onboard hundreds, maybe thousands of different subjects, people, and different things that go on. Onboarding is not limited to the fall. It's not limited to back to school. It's not limited to even a new staff or a new roster construction. Onboarding is year round. Let's start with these two facts and three musts that I think everybody on this call and anybody who is aiming to be a good onboarder should really lean into, okay? Two facts and three musts. Number one, the hardest part of learning is unlearning, meaning when you go into an onboarding scenario and you are giving information to someone, the hardest part of the learning for a new person, a new entity that you're merging with, or even sometimes a new circumstance, is to unlearn the previous information. Very, very challenging and underrated. Secondly, no one can become their best until they feel like they belong. No one can become their best until they feel like they belong. And that is, even the most talented people in the world cannot become all that God gifted them to be until they feel like they belong. So those are the two facts. The best onboarders I've been around, the people that really take this seriously, they understand those two facts to start with. You must unlearn. Onboarding will require you to teach and preach and give investments surrounding unlearning previous habits and things that went on in the previous place you were. And secondly, your onboarding must include the intentionality of making people feel like they belong. They have to be full arms open, full interactions, and all things that are done have to be done with making sure that your group feels like they belong. So to do that, there's three musts, in my opinion. These are, in my opinion, non-debatable musts for good onboarding programs. Number one, you got to have the right person or group of people onboarding. Okay. These are genuine people. These are people or a person. And some of you guys are probably in a smaller staff situation where that person has to be you. And the person who is onboarding needs to want good for others. When you onboard someone, it will be blatantly obvious if you are not wholeheartedly invested in their onboarding. You need to have people around your student athletes, or in our case, professional athletes, who want good for the people they are onboarding. That will come across day one when they communicate a welcome or a communication. Maybe it's sometimes the first onboarding emails are just through email or through text. They're not even yet in person. So you need to have a person or a group of people that are committed to the group's best interest, all right, in charge of onboarding, not just somebody we found next door that we can just throw into this role. It needs to be somebody who's very committed to seeing people's best come out in them. Secondly, you need a curriculum. You need a commitment to a year-round calendar and events that onboards people and onboards topics. I remember several years ago when I worked in college basketball, we had one fall meeting when everybody came back to school, and it was probably 4 or 5 hours long. Trainer would come in, SID would come in, athletic director would come in, and those 4 or 5 hour long meetings were really the entire onboarding curriculum for the year. That cannot happen now. Now your onboarding, like we said, is year round, and you need to have a curriculum that you edit and that you audit every year to make sure that you have every detail covered so that you're preparing your team to be the best possible. Lastly, you need to have energy. Onboarding mandates energy. It requires it. Why is that? Because you're asking people again to shift from something in the past to something in the present. And when you're asking people to shift, they need to feel that your communication with them, this is going to be a good thing for them. Whether it's a new offense, hey, we're onboarding into a new offense, or it's a new assistant coach or a new director of compliance, or we're shifting to a new locker room across the street. When you onboard, you need to show in the inflection in your voice and your body language, and also whoever is in charge in the words they use, you need to have good energy. If you don't have good energy, you will not be a successful onboarder. So again, this is the highlight slide. The best onboarders that I know, they have two facts. The hardest learning is unlearning, and no one's listening to anything I'm saying until they feel they belong. And then also, if you're going to have a good onboarding process, you need to have great people that are doing it, that care about the upside of the group. You need to have a great curriculum that you're building and you're annually auditing, or maybe even semi-annually auditing. And you need to have great energy. Coaches, listen, I understand you guys get sapped for all types of things all day long. And it is so natural for all of us to feel tired, to sometimes feel run down by all of the minutia that comes with leadership. I just want to beg you one thing. Please do not skimp on the energy of your onboarding. Your onboarding energy will set the flagpole for how the direction of your onboarding is going to go. All right, so let's start with number one and the idea of unlearning and how unlearning needs to happen. Okay, so when you're unlearning, remember, whether we're talking about people or coming to a campus, or we're talking about a policy, an old policy, and shifting to a new policy, or maybe we're talking about an AD and now we've changed administrations. Unlearning and relearning happens in groups. So it's very important that when you're talking about unlearning something, you need to understand that there was a previous thing and then there is a new thing. So let me give you an example. For groups, okay, there was a previous group that your student athlete was a part of before he or she came to college, right? That most recent group, a lot of times, maybe it's an AAU team, right? Or maybe it's a high school team. One of the challenges in the NFL that we always had is when we were onboarding athletes, their last group was really not, it was been a long time ago. When we onboarded somebody in the spring, a lot of times they had not been with a team. They had been working out at facilities, or they had been working out with their agent, or potentially maybe off-site somewhere, but they had not been with a group. They had not been with a team for maybe 4, 5, sometimes 6 months. So there's a group that is being off-boarded, if you will, and there is a group that is being onboarded. And so you need to know as a leader what that group is. What is the new group and what is the old group? Okay. There's goals. You are offloading goals from a previous situation, and those need to be unlearned. And then you are onboarding goals. You are explaining vernacular, words, things that you're doing to make sure that you're doing things in line with your goals as a group, as an organization. So again, you're dropping off some goals from the previous existence, you're unlearning those, and then you're teaching the new goals. So that's very important. And then lastly, you are on offboarding gatherings. Okay, how the previous situation gathered, whether it was last year's team or it was previous years in the past, or somebody maybe from high school or maybe another college, how they gathered. You are offboarding them from that, and you are onboarding them into the new way that you gather. And so when you do that, you need to address all three. Listen to me, coaches. When you go through your onboarding, it is not a checklist of the things that you have to tell your student athletes. It is about capturing their heart, capturing their head, and making sure that as you interact with them, that you are changing the group. We are unlearning our old group. We are starting our new group. And so to do that, we're going to accurately organize our groups. We're going to unlearn our goals from the previous thing, and we're going to learn our new goals so that we can be effective and efficient together. We're going to unlearn how you used to gather, and we're going to learn how we gather. And if you can do that in each one of these, then you'll see some success in onboarding and unlearning and learning. So watch this. Let's start with groups. When you go to look at your team, I think it's very natural to want to onboard everybody in the building the same way, right? Okay, we got a back to school meeting. Maybe we've got an orientation of some sort that the school puts together. Obviously, sometimes there's some compliance paperwork. Potentially, there's certain things that go into the new start of new things. Or even when you're dealing with conferences, sometimes there are certain conference mandates to onboard. Listen to me. You cannot onboard people who are offboarding from a different group all as if they are the same group. They are not the same group. So listen, if you've got somebody who's new to your geography, right? That's one thing. We've got somebody, a group, a small subgroup within our group that's coming from the East Coast to the West Coast. So we need to make sure they understand the geography of moving maybe from a rural area to a city. We've got people coming new to the staff. People were on a different staff. Now they're on this staff. Obviously, we might have an international student that's new to the country. That's their first time in the United States, and they're onboarding to the United States for the first time. And then so on and so on and so on. So let me give you a little cheat sheet here. When you start each year, one of the things that is incredibly important is to get a Microsoft Excel document started and write all of your names on the far left. So write down Barkley Radeball, write down Tommy Kyle, write down Jack Easterby, and write down all of the names that are in your program, and then start writing things that will be new for them in this coming season. So think about it this way. Barkley is new to the arena. This is his first time ever playing here. So we're going to have to go over where the shot clock is and make sure that he understands how to get into the arena, where to park, how game day traffic works, all of that stuff, right? But if you'll take your people and list them in a Microsoft Excel document and then put all of the things from left to right that will be new for them this year, And then you can go through and make subgroups in your team that will teach you the different meetings you need to have in order to make sure that you teach all of the subjects that will be important to that year's group. Every year is different. Some year you might have 10 groups. Some years you might have 3 groups because a lot of people have been through the same thing. But you will be amazed at how when you put one big group of people together, they may be all in the same meeting. They may be listening or hearing you're talking if you're talking about the same topics. But before you get to team rules and before you get to any of the big rocks or the big items of your team culture, you need to first address the different little groups that your group is being offboarded off of. All right. So it may be for some of you, if you just keep it simple, it may be a new to college group, a new to my college group, and a new to this season group. It may be that simple, right? I've got a group of transfers that need this information. I've got a group of retained players that need this information. And I got a group, obviously, of freshmen that need this information. Whatever your groups are, make sure you have subgroups for your team so that you can effectively and efficiently get your groups right as you onboard. Secondly, you're going to offboard old goals and you're going to onboard new goals. So in order for them to unlearn those goals, right, you need to have a conversation about what your goals are. And I think that's a very important point that most people don't talk about. What are the goals of onboarding to begin with? Like, what are the goals? Like, why are we doing this? Okay. I wrote down these 3. I'm sure there's more than 3, but I wrote down these 3 to hopefully get you started. Why are we sitting in a meeting explaining to you the history of our gym? Why are we asking you to study the retired numbers for our university? Why are we telling you where to park when you come to the games? Okay. Why are we telling you what time to be on the bus or who to go to when you need an academic advisor help? These 3 things, in my opinion, are kind of the big circles. Number 1, we're trying to change behavior. You had old behavior and we need to unlearn that. And one of our goals in onboarding is we want to change your behavior. And so we need to tell them that when you have a meeting, all right, the goal of this onboarding meeting is to change your behavior. We're not hiding from that. We're not trying to, be silly with it. We are directly telling you, we don't do it like they did it. We do it differently than they did it. It's not bad. It's not good. It's not a comparison. It's a fact. We handle things differently than the way you used to be. And so we want to change your behavior. Here, we don't talk to the officials. We just play basketball or we just play football. We don't talk to the officials. So if you want to change behavior, you have to show a video of why we do that, or you have to explain things in a way to be able to change the behavior. But going back to one of the key unlearning elements of onboarding is that you need to be very intentional when you discuss this with your student athletes, or if you're a pro coach with your athletes, is this is our goal of this onboarding session. We are trying to change behavior. Be straightforward. Secondly, we want to prepare decision-making. Obviously, we can't be in every dorm every week with every athlete, so we can't make sure they always make good decisions, but we can prepare decision-making. So all of our onboarding meetings should have something like, hey, if this happens, then you should blank. If this happens, then you should call blank. If this happens, you should do this. Because when you communicate that way, you are showing them that we're trying to help you as you prepare to make decisions. We know that when you sit in a locker room with all of your staff together, the decisions of that group will determine the ceiling of the group. The decisions of the group in the locker room will determine the ceiling of the group. So you have to offboard yourself from old decision-making matrices and onboard yourself to new decision-making matrices. So again, your goal when you sit down to do an onboarding session needs to be, I want to change your behavior. I want to prepare you to make good decisions. And then third, it needs to be, I want to inspire you. Very, very simple. You were brought here for a reason, and your role has value. and our team is going to make a difference in the community and whatever other ways you choose to inspire. But in the end, these three goals need to be communicated in order for your student athletes to unlearn the previous stuff and onboard with what your new information that you're giving them. Hey, I want to change your behavior. I want to prepare your decision making, and I want to inspire you to be great. The next thing that's very important when you're talking about unlearning versus learning is how you gather. I think this is something a lot of coaches, and I know I personally did, take for granted. When you see someone new show up on your campus, or maybe a new coach, or potentially even a new player, we don't know how the group they were on before gathered, right? How did they meet, right? Where did they sit? How did they receive information? We don't know that. And obviously there's a myriad of ways that teams do that. So when you gather to do your onboarding, you have to be very intentional at a few things that I believe can get their attention, but can also make sure that you are separating yourself from the previous existence and you are recreating, you're onboarding them to the new existence. Here's the matrix that I always used for myself, okay? Is that gatherings, when you have a gathering, an onboarding gathering, okay, it should actualize first. What does that mean? That means it makes it real for them. You should make every single thing feel as real and as tangible as possible. Hey, you're here now. You were at this university. You may have been somewhere else, but you're here now. One of the ways you do that is by having everybody in the group share their story. Maybe having everybody in the group share maybe about why they were named, who they're named after, right? Things like that make it real. They make it tangible. They make it actual, right? Next thing we do is galvanize, okay? When you want to galvanize a group and you're onboarding them, a lot of times the best way to do that is to change the geography of the meeting. So for example, if you're trying to say, hey guys, this year we need to be ready for everything because we're going to play in 4 states and we're going to, I don't know, we're going to change a lot of different time zones and we need to be ready for anything. You may, instead of having your meeting in your team meeting room, you may go to the fire station, local fire station, and you say, hey, listen, we're going to have a meeting here and we're going to have a firefighter present to us how to change and to be ready for anything. When they show up at a house, they don't know if they're getting a cat out of a tree or if they're going to obviously put a fire out. They don't know. So they got to be ready for anything. So the way as a leader you galvanize the group is instead of sitting them in that same meeting, all right, you might take them over to the fire chief and let him explain how important it is to be ready for anything. So we want to actualize, we want to galvanize, we want to normalize. So what does that mean? We also want to have a series of meetings where they are sitting in their exact seat where they'll sit for the year, right? Where they're in the exact room, in the exact arena, in the exact situation, and you are simulating those things to have that discussion so that you can make sure, as you discuss, they feel normal in those habits, and make sure that they feel almost the repetitions, if you will, of the new environment becomes old to them, hopefully by the time it matters. And then lastly, you want them to realize, okay? And that really is the information dump portion. Now, if we were to break this down, I think coaches are really good most of the time at doing the realization and the normalization. What does that mean? I think people will data dump. They will realize stuff. They will give phone numbers. They will give things like that. No problem. They will normalize. They will say, hey, we meet in here. This is our team meeting room. This is what we do. Great. But not everybody actualizes and not everybody galvanizes. So don't be afraid as you onboard to change your meeting location, all right, to have everybody share their story, to do things like that, that hopefully will create some of the emotional connections that need to be recreated because this is a new situation. All right, secondly, becoming is tied to belonging, okay? All right, think about this real quick. It's not just about being present. People are present in different meetings, right? It's about being actively aligned, actively participating, intentionally contributing to the to the group's activities / goals, because psychological safety is present. Now, what do I mean by all that? Okay. Remember, there's two important cornerstones to good onboarding. Number one is you have to unlearn the past and learn the present. Everything needs to have that 50-50 ball, if you will. Unlearn, learn. But number two is no one in the room can become what you want them to become, no matter what information you're giving them, until they feel like they belong. Until they've been fist bumped, until they've been hugged, until they've been told that they have a role, that there's a specific place for them, that we've been excited for your arrival. All of those things have to happen in order for them to belong. So in my mind, I always ask people, how many people on your team feel like they belong? Because if we're onboarding, right, the goal is to shift people from one place to another place to another place. So when we're talking about belonging, okay, let's think about it this way. If you were onboarding and you were trying to increase belonging while you onboard, okay, you cannot onboard people towards production. You have to onboard them towards belonging. Listen to me. So when a lot of people are onboarding, hey, Barkley, you're here to be our number 2 guard. You're going to do this, this, and this. Hey, that's great. But you first have to onboard them to belonging, because when they know that they belong, then they can become the best version of themselves. Okay. So how do you onboard them to belonging? Well, the way you onboard them to belonging is first you have to tell them who you are. What are the values of the team? What are the values of the program? What are the rules of the program? What are the different things what's the history of the program? They need to know that, because they're not going to be psychologically safe unless the specifics of you and the vulnerability of your program is on Front Street for them to opt into, right? Secondly, you need to tell them what you expect. Tell them what you expect. What do you expect out of everybody in the room? Everybody needs to tell the truth. Everybody needs to have a sincere interaction. Everybody needs to text back, all the way down as small as you can get, with the most small details about what you expect. Because if you don't belong, right? If you don't feel like you belong, it doesn't matter what onboarding we do. Lastly, you need to be able to give out some roles. Roles are very important when you onboard people. If you onboard people to certain roles, then they will have a incredible vision for themselves in your environment. That's probably one of the most difficult things about this transfer situation, is a lot of times people feel they can't get a vision for themselves in their environment, in their new environment. It's like, hey, I knew who I was there, but I don't know who I am here. So in my opinion, these 3 things right here highlighted all need to be meetings unto themselves. Who are you? Meaning, who is the team? What does the leader expect of the room? And then lastly, who is doing what for the group, right? And that will hopefully give vision for everybody in the room. And hopefully that will help increase belonging, which will allow them to be onboarded to their new role. All right. This is a reality, and Barkley mentioned some of our talks with Earl and Laval and others. This is the reality of onboarding right now. I did this like a stoplight, because I think this needs to be looked into and thought about as you look at your team. So I mentioned again, a Microsoft Excel, all of your people to the left, all of the new things that will be new for them this year. This is also another Excel that you might want to think about doing. Okay. Because in my opinion, there's only 3 statuses of belonging that you need to focus on. Okay. People on your roster, people on your staff, they are one of these 3. They're checked out. They're making a decision on whether they're going to be in or out, or they are all in. They are all in. In my experience working with lots of different teams, I think there's usually 10% that are checked out, and there are usually 10 to 15, 20% that are all in. That leaves a mass group of people that are waiting to make a decision on whether they're going to be all in, and onboarding many times is the difference. You hear me, coaches? You got 10% of people, whether it's a character issue or maybe a certain difficulty that people are having, they're just checked out. Then you have several people who are with you. They will jump on a train track. They are evangelists for your culture, right? And then you have a huge group of people, all right, that are in your team meeting rooms that are making a decision whether they're going to be all in. And you have a short window at how you're going to get that yellow group to the green group. So the challenge, if you're a head coach, is how many people can I get from the yellow group to the green group? How many people can I get from the red group to the yellow group, right? And I want to make sure that I'm getting buy-in, and I'm going to create whatever meetings are necessary, whether that's meetings before meetings, meetings after meetings, conversations, obviously connection points, dinners, field trips. It doesn't matter. I'm going to build whatever customized curriculum I need to shift my group out of the red and into the green. Essentially important. All right, the last thing I want to do here is I want to go through a chart that I made a few years ago, because when you onboard, one of the things that you have to think about is, what is the team going to go through that year, right? What is the team going to go through? And so one year, Coach Belichick and I sat down and we talked about what the team was going to go through throughout the season. What was the most likely surroundings and the different circumstances that the team was going to go through. And so as we began to build our onboarding curriculum, we thought about obviously the different things that the team potentially could go through, and that gave us triggers to be able to make sure that we built our onboarding curriculum the right way. So this is obviously with an NFL schedule in mind. So it'll be a little different for the college season, but I would imagine the situations are probably similar. These stages are nothing proprietary. I just wrote these stages as I thought them out. And again, I thought they were very, very apropos for what was happening to us and how it all unfolded. All of us go through a new and awkward stage. So you need to have a certain curriculum and onboarding for your new and awkward stage, right? Everybody's sharing their story, people communicating to each other. That's the new and awkward stage. Then it gets casual and hopeful. Everybody on this Zoom's been undefeated before, right? In the off season, everybody's undefeated. Doesn't matter how many games you have on your schedule. You can feel good about being your season and your roster when you hadn't played a game yet, because everybody's excited and hopeful. And then all of a sudden you've practiced together, you've done a few strength sessions together, and people are starting to understand a little bit about what your team's going to be about, and there's some common ground and time logged. And then all of a sudden something happens. Player gets hurt. Unfortunately, maybe someone is going through something personally, and there's some lessons that go on. That also includes the team season. Let's say in the beginning of college basketball, maybe that's late December, where you go through something for the first time. Hey, we thought we should win this game and we got blown out. Or, hey, we thought we were better than this and we're not. Okay. That's the conversation that comes up in that shared adversity intense lessons. Then, right, you have a success. Something goes right. Maybe you have a great game, an upset, or potentially a winning streak, and you see, okay, this can work, right? This can work. And then hopefully you have a repeat system success where more things go right. And then hopefully you have a complete system success where that year's season reaches its actual best. But the thing I wanted to show you that I think we should prepare for, and the reason that onboarding is so important, is if you see these lightning strikes on your screen, I put down ego/adversity event. It is going to rain on your culture. It's going to rain. There's going to be people who are selfish. There's going to be people who don't want what's best for the team. There's going to be situations that happen where people get frustrated and two people at practice just get after each other. We all know that. So your onboarding curriculum needs to include conflict resolution. It needs to include past lessons from these ego and adversity moments in years past. A lot of you guys have been leading for a long time. You've got a great library of lessons that you've learned throughout the years of things that could happen. So one way to start this year's onboarding the right way is to go through your 25 or your 24-25 notebook and write down all the things that happened. I wrote this list down as I was preparing for this Zoom because I thought this might be a really interesting way to list this out, because I thought it's apropos for what we're trying to discuss here. Each year, this is what happens. Somebody's grandfather is going to pass. Somebody's grandmother is going to be sick. Some assistant coach is going to have something go on that they need to go to the hospital. Someone's wife is going to go through something. Someone's parents are going to go through something. Someone's has a financial issue and there's a car that needs to be fixed. Someone's dad or mom gets laid off from a job. Someone's brother has a criminal challenge. Someone has an injury. Some stranger breaks into somebody's room or locker room. Someone feels that they're not going to make it when they get out of this situation, or potentially financial issues. Someone gets kicked out of their house, and then in the end, someone's family's asking for money. All of that is going to happen, right? So if all of that is going to happen, how do we onboard with the idea that those things are all going to happen during the next school year? And so I would just challenge you with the idea that the two most important things, again, in summary here, you cannot learn until you unlearn. So everybody in here has got things that they've learned for a long period of time. You have to unlearn those things and learn this year's curriculum in light of lessons we all have had, but especially with the intentionality of what this year will need. And I believe those unlearning different nuggets that I shared are very important and need to hopefully lay out part of your curriculum. But then secondly, everybody needs to be able to be told that they belong. And when we focus on belonging through explaining all the different transparent parts of our group, whether it's rules or how we got here or the roles that people play, hopefully that will ingratiate your student athletes to help become the best versions of who they can be. So again, this is no copyrights, nothing perfect in that. But I did want to share a few lessons along the way. And again, I'm so humbled. This ministry does such a good job of getting great information to coaches who are really trying to do it right. And so I'm open to any questions and conversations, Barkley, if you have them. And
yeah, Jack, thank you. Thank you so much. That is incredible information. When I was studying onboarding and just thinking about onboarding, as we traveled this summer, it was the number one question we had. Help us learn to onboard, because rosters change. Onboarding is not an orientation.
right.
I remember taking Anna and Reed and Sophia to orientation, and you're oriented. It's not an orientation. It's not a 1 or 2 day thing.
That's right.
It is a constant practice of onboarding your team onto what your program is, to your culture, to your chemistry, to your thoughts, to your beliefs.
That's right.
So if I said this to you, Jack, what would be your response? The greatest need for a player, athlete, is to belong. What would be your response?
Yeah, I think that we have been gifted by God incredible gifts. And I think that we don't know the ceiling of those gifts when our psychological safety is not at its max, Meaning, if we don't feel that we belong to a group, even the most gifted person is not going to accomplish what they possibly could. So, in my opinion, I just think that the belonging portion of each meeting, whether that's explaining something that you're trying to communicate from a principal standpoint, or just showing the intentionality of why we recruited each one of you, why we brought you here, why did we bring you here. I think those things again drop the doors and take off some of the layers to get to the real heart of hopefully any athlete, because again, if they don't feel they belong, I just don't think the gifts that they've been given can be activated. And I believe our world is filled with gifted people who, for some reason, whether it was elementary school or middle school or high school or college, they never felt they belong. And so what they do is they go find their community at some point, maybe it's when they're 35, but at the end, they find a community, and that community then helps them feel they belong. And then all of these gifts are activated. So as leaders, I think if we can be as intentional as possible in that belonging piece, we can activate people's gifts.
So for us, Jack, multiple AAU teams, 4 colleges in 4 years, the opportunity to belong gets confused. And these players have a deep heart need to belong to something. And the coaches that can create that sense of belonging have an upper hand toward pushing towards success. Because the greatest need for our student athletes is to belong to something. People will fly and travel back miles to go to a team reunion that won a
Yes.
championship because they belong to that. You see them standing on the court and they're part of that. They belong to that. In 1984 or 1991, they won the whatever championship.
Okay.
In fact, Jack, first on board to belonging, then on board to production. 2 more minutes on that.
Yeah, I think that it is very easy when we are specifically when you're compensating someone in the pay for play type of vibe that we're in now in college. And for us in the NFL, it was very, very difficult because we were usually drafting or onboarding someone for a specific purpose, to not always have that purpose in mind, right? And so when you've signed a big man who's going to be a rim protector, or you've signed a shooter who's going to come in and shoot 40+% from three. And so your mindset is like, we got to get you shooting in the gym, or, hey, we got to get you to be a rim protector. And I think that, again, we want to onboard the human first. We want to onboard the heart first before we get to the gifts. Because if we don't onboard the heart, the gifts will not become what they can become. You made a great point there earlier about the conversations that we have with our old teams and our new teams. And sometimes people felt they belonged in an AAU team, right? They felt like they belonged that. And so at age 16, they had a successful run and they were in a national tournament, and maybe they felt like that was where they belonged. And so age 18, age 19, age 20, they've never felt they belonged again until, right, maybe they came to your team. And then all of a sudden now they start belonging again. So I would have people list the teams that they felt they belonged with. Okay. I would hit it straight on. I would say, hey, my name's Barkley, and I was at Charleston Southern University, and I feel like I best belonged in the 95 team. And this is why. Or, hey, share with me really quickly, everybody go through the time when you thought you were at your best as a student athlete in high school. And that shows you what they belonged, and it shows you when they felt belonging. And so then you can acquiesce and mold and shape all of the vernacular to make sure as best you can that you can help them belong in the new environment. Now, again, let's be clear, Barkley, because you and I would never do this. Well, I'm not talking about putting on, gloves and everybody has to, be friends all the time. You can't always change
That's
everything
right.
you do to make everybody belong. There will be some people who don't belong. But I do believe the best players and the best people will reach their gifts max when they feel they belong in that culture.
Yes, some are going to choose not to belong, and players are constantly evaluating their degree of belonging.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
can go from the red to the yellow to the green, and in either direction. So coaches just know they're constantly evaluating their degree of belonging.
But let me say this too, Barkley, about the unlearning portion. Even the best, even the best of a previous environment has a downside. Okay. So, for example, if I was a part of a great high school team and now I'm transitioning to college, okay, I can still ask a guy who was 35-0 his senior year, hey, what are some things that you have to unlearn from high school? And now he can see that environment for what it really was. Well, I have to unlearn that I probably can't shoot it 50 times a game. Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
Because I need my teammates. Okay. Well, you sharing that is going to help you unlearn that habit, because now we need you to share the basketball in order for us to be successful. So even the good successes of our past, there are things about them that need to be unlearned. And so when you're talking about onboarding, you can't onboard without focusing on unlearning. Unlearn the past, take the good, leave the bad, and let's shape you into who we need you to be for this setting right now.
Okay, two more questions, Jack. Anthony Solomon, one of our nation's great coaches, now with the Phoenix Suns. With all the changes in college, what do you suggest to leaders on how to engage and educate families with onboarding? Great question,
Yeah,
Anthony.
yeah, great question. And I got to give Coach Belichick a lot of credit. When I got to New England, one of the things that he mentioned was family meetings, and specifically Zooming with player families in the offseason as they transitioned. And so we started a support staff Zoom for players. And then in training camp, we would have family meetings where we would actually onboard the families. We would explain tickets. We would explain road tickets, home tickets. We would explain certain things that families needed about family sections. We would explain about driving in the snow, right? For some of the people that were from the rural South and had just moved to Foxborough. And we had a very in-depth document that we gave everyone to try to catch them up to speed. We also explained to them some rules, some things that were information they could get online, but it was just re-articulated rules about the roster, rules about how people were paid, rules about how communication would function within our team. And so we definitely tried to have a curriculum, a sub-curriculum underneath each athlete throughout the year, and underneath each staff member, that allowed us to really hopefully support, onboard, equip, and inspire everybody who was in our team to be their best. So yes, I definitely think we got to engage the support systems. The one thing I would say that's really key in that is we met with the support systems usually without the player there, because
Mm.
we didn't want to be talking about the player to the support system. So we would just let the support system, we would, give out t-shirts and welcome people and make everyone feel encouraged. And then we would pivot to the information that we had. And usually if you feed everybody or do something, if you're on site, you can also make it some community impact events and hopefully tie it in any way you can possibly do with that.
All right, last question. Thank you for your time, Jack. I see those Super Bowl trophies back there. I'm just so thankful for your wisdom and how hard you've worked to create these systems of onboarding, managing a team, administrating a team. From our very own Pete Weary, curriculum. We've spent hours talking about curriculum.
Mm.
I can't imagine going through a season without a thought out curriculum. And Pete's question, obviously a lot of work in creating a curriculum. Off season, when did you create it? And did you do that in as a staff, or did you do that you and Coach Belichick and then present it to your staff?
Yeah, I think there's no wrong way to do. The only wrong thing about a curriculum is not having one, right? So you
Right.
you got to have a curriculum. I think that one of the most powerful things that I learned from Coach Belichick, and I think anybody has learned from him that has been in any of his squad meetings or any of his leadership meetings, is you can't win until you keep from losing, right? And so the idea of winning and being successful means that everybody has to be on time. Everybody has to be prepared for all situations that happen in a football game. Everybody has to have the right equipment. And so what we did, I thought, when I first got there, was we did a really good job of listing the things that we felt would impact us the most, right? Character issues, on-time issues, assignment issues, communication issues, and we would list those things, and that would begin our curriculum every year. Here's the list of things that would totally just, they would sideswipe us. If we did this, it would really be, it would handcuff us in order to be functional. And so we really start with functionality before we get to efficiency. And I think that's something that a lot of assistant coaches who become head coaches for the first time, they are really excited about how great they can become, and they forget the first thing that the group has got to do is be functional. You just got to be functional. And then once you get to be functional, you get to be more efficient throughout the year. So I would say, yes, it's more of an off-season thing. I would say I would start with a calendar. I would start with colors for different items. So if you're talking about team meetings that you're going to address, staff meetings that you're going to address, if something's a medical meeting that you're going to address, if it's a logistical meeting you're going to address, I would start with colors, and I would start with the calendar, and then I would start with the day one of the off season and go through as many of those misses that you can learn from last year, and then begin to memorialize meetings that will cover those misses for the next year. And then I would just try to annually improve. I do think keeping notes at the end of each day, that's something I've tried to do over the course of my career, is just write, hey, today is this day, and March the 15th, and I just write a couple of notes, and then I save it under that day so that I'll always have it in case in the future I need to ask myself, hey, at the end of the season, we had this issue come up and maybe I couldn't remember it exactly. Go back to that week, read the notes, and that allows me to kind of build a curriculum as I go. But yeah, it sounds negative, but I would start with the misses. You got to be, on time. You got to be on present. You can't have any drug tests. You can't have any, issues where people don't know where to go if they've got an issue on a Friday night. Obviously, you got to know who to call. Everybody's got everybody's phone numbers. Start with the things that would be misses, and then work your way through from functionality to efficiency that way. And I would definitely involve a calendar, a cyclical calendar that you can edit in any way possible.
Coaches, we've been blessed tonight. We've heard from one of our nation's best. Jack Easterby is an expert in leading teams, being an executive with teams, being an administrator with teams, and he's just shared with us some incredible opportunities for us to onboard our teams this year in strategic and meaningful ways that will eliminate questions and problems as the season starts that could cause friction that could affect winning. To pre-think everything, to have a curriculum, to onboard them to who we are, who our culture is, what is our chemistry, what do we stand for, what are the pillars that are strong in our programs. So thank you, Jack. There's going to be lots of questions. There's going to be lots of comments. Jack, if they want to get a hold of you, could you give us your email?
Sure,
So that
yeah.
coaches across the country, we had almost 100 coaches on tonight listening. There's going to be questions.
Sure. First of all, Barkley, let me just tell you, I love you. Thank you for your wisdom and mentorship in my life, and consistent representation of who Christ is in all that you've done as a coach. You are one of my mentors, and will remain that way because of what God has done and your fingerprint in so many people on this Zoom's life. Yeah, email's easy. It's jack@thegreatestchampion.org. And I would love to help anyway. Or if you guys jot down the questions that are in the chat, I'm glad to get back to people individually. A lot of good men and women, I'm sure, on this Zoom that are going to make a big difference this year.
Yes. Coaches, if you have questions for me, I can get to Jack also. I get to talk to him regularly. It's a privilege. My phone number is 843-509-3824. We got this again coming up in our preseason growth series starting September 18th. You can register um, by right there. Unbelievable lineup of speakers to help you grow. And you can click on with your phone right there and register. You will be glad you did. You can scan the code there and get everything you need to be a part of our preseason growth series. It's going to be phenomenal. 750 coaches from across the world signed up last year, and we had a phenomenally successful preseason growth series. That's gonna happen again. If we can serve you in any way at Nations of Coaches, get on our website, see the many opportunities that we have for coaches to grow, for marriages to grow, for coaches' wives. Nations of Coaches provides almost anything that you would need as a coach to grow. Our ultimate goal is that you fall in love with Jesus and you coach as the master coach Jesus Christ would coach. Thank you so much for being with us. We hope that you will be a part of our preseason growth series. We love you and we look forward to seeing you soon.